is a combination of the government and the private sector. For example, for the River of Life, the second biggest EPP after MRT, it involved 42 agencies. When we have our monthly task force meeting at the DIB, some of the attendees have to sit outside the room. But they're all keen to turn up, as one speaker said. If they don't turn up 3 times, it's like NBA basketball, timeout. You cannot come to the court until the next quarter, after the next quarter. So we also have that. In my Greater KL State Committee, the chairman or the leading minister is the federal director minister. He gives a ruling that if you miss 3 consecutive steering committee meetings, then he will consider excluding you from the future meetings. So as serious as that, because you have very little interest in what is happening. So I think if we can carry on this way, open engagement internally as well as the members of the public, and then continue with the good governance and make sure people are committed all the way from Deputy Prime Minister to the ministers to the head of agencies and all that. Inshallah, we should be able to continue. And we don't really need a single transport. I think SPAD is already very good. I think we've been waiting for SPAD for many years, until we recommended it during the first lap and then the form June 2010.
So I think that is a very positive view that really our problem is not in having one mechanism or one public transport body, but actually in engagement of stakeholders. And I think there are various mechanisms available by the government to undertake this exercise. So I think that's good. Thank you, Suhairi, for your intervention. Siapa lagi yang nak? Oh, I'm speaking Malay now. Would you like to see?
I feel that was right. And it's a great challenge, road safety, but we got a vested interest, strategic interest in public transport, because the higher level you raise the optimum of public transport, definitely the road casualties, we believe, will definitely go down. And it's still the safest form of transport, despite the news appearing in the papers of bus crashes and so on. Last year, I think there were only about, when I say only a death is still a death, 13 casualties on public transport, compared to 6,877 total last year. So public transport, really, we are all for it and we give our support to it. Coming back to the single authority, Sheikh Matno and myself were in the ministry. That's where we became unstuck. Because we realized that policy, let's not talk about institutions, we don't have a coordinated policy. Talk about national transport policy. There's so many inputs coming in there, so we can't really come up with a consolidated, concerted kind of approach. And that's the problem now, not so much a single institution, but a policy, vis-a-vis like road safety. That what we encourage public transport, we still have this national automated policy, which we are a car-owning, vehicle-owning democracy. We don't stop people from owning any number of cars. So therein, I'm just wondering, SPAD will have to grapple with that policy. Don't talk about institutions, but how do we reconcile such policies? And if I may go back to the concerns expressed by Chair Matno earlier, when he mentioned that we're taking steps now to address mobility in the short term, but he has his concerns over longer term issues like livable cities and economic catalysts. If Chair Matno would like to share with us his concerns in that area, we'll be quite interested to know that. Thank you.
Before I call Matno to say something, can I give the floor to you to...
Thanks, Patrick. I'm Wong from Manos. I would have to say I'm glad in the sense that, or feel honored in the sense that I was getting involved in the lab, the NKRA, and that's why I met a lot of great people here as well today. So anyhow, I believe we have the problem about setting policies is one thing, but implementation is the key, I believe. And before with the Komando coming in, I guess that is a bit, I would say, losing, but with the DGF and the approach being given, I can see some significant progress. But my worry is that we cannot focus on everything, because if we focus on everything, we focus on nothing. And that's why setting priority is always a very key thing for the nation to move, and also in terms of transportation as well. So I do believe a platform like DTF should move on, carry on, and get the key thing to be done for the nation. And but I believe we shouldn't just focus at the national level, but at the lower part, like for example, the local authority side, they should have that sort of mechanism to get things done in a more proactive way. So I believe this is still the missing part, and we, officially, I'm still with the ministry. So we believe, we hope we can work hand in hand and get things done. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. I think both of them just reiterate they are still with the ministry. And I do not know for what reason. So now, I think maybe we can go back to Mano just now. He talks, I think, what 3 important issues that have been brought up on mobility, livable cities, economic growth. So I give your reaction. How do you see this happening?
No, actually, I was actually listening to the discussion, and before Leslie brought it up, I was actually thinking to myself, we are back to focusing on transport as the problem statement, Kuala Lumpur as a city as the problem statement. So, through our experience developing Greater KL Klang Valley Public Transport Master Plan, while that is going on, the plan for KL City Plan has already taken off before that. So that's precisely my worry. We are developing plans even though we talk to each other, but the plans were developed separately. So the question is, how do we do this better in the future? Definitely moving towards a single authority is not the answer. So if that's not the answer, then how do we define ways of working together while respecting each other's institutional capabilities and powers, and find a way to start the collaboration more upstream rather than after the plans are already evolving at the downstream stage. So that is actually my concern, because if we don't do that, we'll all be moving in separate directions, and what is being envisioned as the ultimate destination that we want to be in 2020 is at risk. That's it.
Are you happy with that answer? He has just proposed a new thesis, is it? From looking at transport, you should look how should you build Kuala Lumpur into a livable city as a problem statement. So I think actually I see a lot of voices of pessimism. I'm a very optimistic person. I think there is a lot of mechanisms now for integrating all the different plans. If you look at the previous situation, now with transformation, there's a lot of mechanisms that, we may be planning, but at the end of the day, it has to go to one central body. There is a one central body. So I think it's not that bad, but let us not. But I think a lot of the ideas here should be taken in how we improve existing mechanisms in order to have a better integration and coordination, so that not, the right hand is doing the different thing, the left hand is doing different thing, whilst we all have got one common objective. Okay, now can I invite Silan?
Thank you. I'm from KTM.
From KTM, eh?
I'm from KTM.
You better introduce yourself.
basically, when you are looking back at the previous public transport project, is more towards the project motivated. But I think since of late, most of those initiative has been focused towards the customer focus. And I think as far as SPAD is concerned, this is the legal framework which covers the public transport for for the goods and the people. And but I think it's at the present moment it's a question of other than the awareness and promotion. We should, as been pointed out by Pemandu just now, talking about the integration and getting work together. This is where a lot of things can be resolved. And if I would like to look from the cargo point of view, right? Malaysia is being located at a very strategic location, especially at the busiest waterway. But unfortunately, we does not really explore the geographical positioning by serving the hinterland in the Mekong Basin or in Chao Phraya Basin. This is one of these areas which is we can look at. And but internally, I guess if we can maximize the utilization of railway as the backbone for the public transport for goods and passenger, I'm sure a lot of advantages we can tap from that, not only from the property development, but also from the other economic activities. Thank you, Darat.
And I'd now like to give the floor back to Mano. He can add into some of the things I had just said just now in order to broaden the scope of what we have been discussing.
Thank you, Datsy. I just thought of an example to better paint the picture that I'm concerned about, now I'm worried about. The discussions yesterday talk about the opportunity of really designing people-friendly, pedestrian-friendly, attractive, transit-oriented developments that people want to go there and live there, play around there. But if we look at our current public transport infrastructure, look at all the LRT stations, look at all the KTM stations, what do we see? We hardly see any hubs of interesting activities going on, except for KL Central. This is the only place where things come together around a public transport hub. So we are about to spend billions upon billions of dollars for the next few years, 10 years. Can we afford to continue the way we've done in the past, where nothing happens around public transport infrastructure? Or do we solve part of the mobility problem by having people congregate around public transport infrastructure that allows them, that encourages them to take public transport? So you are solving the problem at the root level. But if this planning is done in a disparate, silo way, this thing is not going to happen. We will still end up with stations like Abdullah Hukum. We will still end up stations where nothing happens for around 1 kilometers around it. Not even feeder services. So do we continue to try to solve problems after things happen? Or do we nip the problem in the bud during the planning stages? That is what I'm encouraging the forum to brainstorm.
Yes, please, Dr. Wong.
Thanks, Nasri. I think, Mano, you have a very they would feel so when they develop something, the public transport will come in. So while from the transport planner side, they will believe a station there, the developer will come in. So, but this, I don't think we should make this into two siloed things. I believe we should work even at the planning stage. But I believe another aspect will be the dynamic behind it. Things are moving, things are changing. There could be some planning, I believe, maybe with I would say one side of the planning portion for say, for example, the developer may believe or they may overheard something which may not be in the concrete mode. Then the public transport will come into their area. Then they start doing things or mobilize their resources to get it done. But eventually things may not happen. And we do believe and we know that, for instance, budget issues. Initially, yes, a station to be there, but eventually budget comes into a constraint, then they take it off. So, but I do believe communication shouldn't be just at the planning, but throughout the implementation as well. Thank you.
I remember some time ago when we had a discussion with the City Hall of Kuala Lumpur. One of the things which we proposed then was to give them a tax incentive for those who like to develop their properties around or close to there's a transport hub. I think this is one of other things which is we do also recommend when we are talking about the universal friendly facilities as well. So with all those incentives, carrot and whip, I think that we'll be able to draw them to a certain extent. And the other thing, Dr. Sri, is even with the close proximity to the public transport, I'm sure the requirement of having X number of car park lot can be tremendously reduced. So this is also giving an opportunity for developer to turn that car park into more profitable activity. Thank you.
Really, the challenge is also with us. If you look at the power, the functions that we have, there is an overarching right on the part of us in incorporating development to take into account public transport needs and requirements. So I think, but it's a very interesting to see how we have reacted. You see, Malaysia, if you look at historically, we used to be contractor driven. The suggestion comes. So I think this contractor driven cannot be sustained. And now we are moving to a different direction. So government takes the lead, but the private sector must be the mover of this, the driver of whatever lead that the government has given through its transformation policy. In fact, under the transformation policy, it's the private sector is expected to be the engine of growth. So I think it was a very good intervention of Dr. Wong when he says that develop a bill and he will look at the public transport requirements later on. But I think I see that the new actually there should be consultation, the planning, and at the end of the planning. So I think there's much more work for us to do together. And Berkenaan tax incentive is a very, very interesting, but those areas are areas where the station's already there, right? And then you want to encourage people to come in. So anyway, it's been very interesting discussion, and the companies, Farizo.
Rather echo Cik Makno's concern. I think the fear that is gripping Cik Makno is that planning and implementation of land public transport infrastructure, which is time-consuming, might, in some event, be overtaken by the demand that exists in the first place. I recall decades ago, my late father, for example, when we lived in Ampang, which is in suburbs of KL, he used to go to the heart of the city to pick up his laundry. I mean, that is traveling. But nowadays, after 30 years, you have all the convenience of those things, right? Maybe 1 kilometer away, so you don't have to travel that much anymore. So it evolves, and the question is whether public transport then becomes relevant as planning and even lifestyle changes. I guess to really, we as SPAD, we have to do that soul searching and determine the baseline. What is actually the role public transport is playing here? What do we serve the public? How do we serve the public? Is it by creating a terminal which is also where we work and play? Or is it purely to serve their mobility needs? I guess that is the baseline that we have to establish. And once we have done that, then we can confidently plan without having the fear that our planning will be overtaken by town land use planning or even our town planning. So I think that's my contribution.
Okay, this is from SPAD. And Silit, please take the
My name
floor.
is Nuria from Prasarana. I think the main challenge for Prasarana, right from the beginning, is to get the we can plan, but then we have to work with the local authorities and also on the town planning or even the land use by the private owners. So, example like the Awam case, we have been discussing about this with DBKL since 2006. There was a plan to connect the valley to Awam. Then came SP Setia in. So these are the things that the external factors that affecting that project, and at the end it just quiet. So Awam is a case, but we also have other stations that probably face the same thing, as we are not able to get the local authority to assist us to drive. We need local authorities to assist us to drive, and when SPAD is here now, I think SPAD can be the central coordinator for all this. So we welcome SPAD to be part of this integration things for the public transport. Thank you.
Thank you, Noria. I can see your frustration is being solved if everybody has got, one commodity, because there is a very good connectivity. But I think because of different interests, then that thing it never got off the ground. But I think it's going to be. So there is a chicken and egg situation about ridership. We have to look at it, I think, in the long run. Otherwise, if you look at ridership, many of the rail projects may not be able to get off. So whatever it is. And now I'd like to call Mr. Bertin to give your input to all this very interesting discussion, please.
Thank you. All coming very much to the same point, and I'll come back to a gentleman's question over there is, do we as SPAD, do we provide mobility? Is that our principal responsibility, or are we also a catalyst for growth? Are we looking for creating more than just mobility and creating the places in the last and in the first miles? One of the things that Atkins have been involved in a lot is obviously the mobility aspect. And as an architect, amongst 18,000 engineers, I can tell you that a lot of our focus goes on the enormous engineering challenges and the constraints to deliver such an incredibly complicated mobility service. But in addition to that, our planners and our architects spend just as much time thinking very, very hard about the first mile and the last mile. And we realize that there's an intrinsic challenge in that when we are designing railways, trunk lines across cities, these designs and policies for these designs are set probably 10, 15 years ahead of when a development is actually going to take place. So, and it's very, very difficult to establish what is the last mile going to look like 10 years or 15 years ahead when you don't really have a very, very strong feeling for what the economy at that time will look like, what kind of developers will be around to develop around the first mile and the last mile. So that's one of the biggest challenges. And in my presentation yesterday, I tried to communicate that one of the aspects that certainly Atkins can bring to the table is we can forecast certainly what will the last mile look like, and we can show what can it be as a visionary component of our service. What can it be, and how can then the mobility service, or the railway or the trunk lines, how can it then connect into ultimately a new city or a new hub? Again, coming back to working with so many engineers, one of the things as architects that we're often asked is, after months of study and after months of work, is, okay, but what does it look like? And this is where we can provide quite an important service and a quite important visionary aspect to the plan. We can show you what it can look like, and we can do that 10 years in advance of actually when it's going to get built. And that vision can be communicated not just to the local authorities, it can also be communicated at state levels, but particularly also to developers, so that when we engage in discussion and communication with the various stakeholders, we're not just talking about how to get out of the station onto the street, but we're talking about how to get out of the station into the development, into the places where people will live in the city, work, live environments. It's really about urban design and placemaking. And that aspect, and I really keep going back to the same term, the first mile and the last mile, that aspect is so important in the whole policy setting, that visionary aspect should be brought to the table 10 years or 5 years, or well in advance of setting policies, or at the same time as when you set policies for the railways itself.
Mile and the vision that you are able to see ahead what it should be. I think